My psychotic younger sister got pregnant by my older sister's fiancé. I am the middle sister, which means I had no role in what happened, and a front row seat to all of it, and no clean way to exist in my own family for the foreseeable future. I found out from my older sister Celeste on a Tuesday morning when she called me crying so hard I couldn't understand her for the first 90 seconds. My younger sister Bria was 11 weeks pregnant. The father was Marcus. Marcus, who had been engaged to Celeste for 14 months. Marcus, who had been coming to our family's Christmas for 3 years, and sitting at our table and eating our food, and apparently also sleeping with Bria for long enough that she was 11 weeks pregnant. Celeste asked me one question first. She said, "Did you know?" Not did you know about the pregnancy. Did you know about anything? I said no. That was true about the pregnancy. It was not fully true about everything. I had seen something 8 months ago at a family barbecue. Marcus and Bria at the edge of the yard in a conversation that stopped when I came outside. A specific quality to the stopping. I had told myself I was being paranoid because I did not want to be the person who accused her sister's fiancé of something she couldn't prove. I had chosen comfort over instinct, and my older sister had paid for that choice for 8 months without knowing she was paying for it. I said no, and I meant the pregnancy, and I have been living in the gap between what I meant and what she asked ever since. Bria called that afternoon. She said it wasn't what it looked like. I said I wasn't sure what else it could look like. She said she had feelings for Marcus for a long time, and she had made a mistake. I said, Bria, a mistake is a singular event. I said I need you to tell me how long. 7 months. 7 months of Marcus coming to our family's table and sitting across from Celeste and passing the bread rolls. I went to see Celeste that evening. She was at her apartment surrounded by the specific devastation of a woman dismantling an engagement. She had a box. She was putting things in it the way you put things in a box when you need your hands to do something while your mind is somewhere else. I sat beside her on the floor. She asked me again if I had known anything. I told her about the barbecue, the stopped conversation, and what I had chosen to do with it, which was nothing. She stopped putting things in the box. I said I'm sorry. I said I talked myself out of it because I didn't want to be wrong. She said she wished I had said something. I said I know. She said even if you were wrong, I wish you had said something. I said I know that too. She sat back against the couch and closed her eyes. I sat beside her and thought about all the things we don't say to the people we love because we are trying to protect them, and how protection that requires silence is sometimes the most expensive kind. Marcus called me a week later. I let him talk for 4 minutes. He said he was sorry. It got out of hand. He never meant for any of this. I said calling what he did a mistake was an insult to the word. A mistake is something that happens once in an unguarded moment. What he did was a sustained choice made repeatedly over 7 months across a table where my sister served him dinner. I said I was going to need him to stop calling this family. Bria called at 32 weeks. She said she wanted me at the birth. She said she knew she had broken things that might not be fixable, and she wasn't asking me to forgive her yet. She was asking me to be there because she was scared, and I was the person she wanted when she was scared. I said I would be there. I said being there was not forgiveness. I called Celeste and told her. She was quiet. Then she said she would have said yes too. She said she hated that she would have said yes too. She said being someone's sister is the most inconvenient thing she had ever been. I said yeah. I said I thought that was exactly right. The baby came on a Thursday. I held Bria's hand. They put the baby in my arms after, and she was warm, and her eyes were closed, and her fingers were curled into tiny fists, and she was my niece. That was true no matter how she got here. For about 2 weeks, it felt like maybe we were going to find our way. Then Bria started calling, not about the baby, about the family. She asked me if our parents Boston and Ludmila had said anything about wanting to meet the baby. She said, can you ask them? They'll listen to you. And I felt it. This little tug that wasn't sadness and wasn't anger, but was recognition. I was being handed a job I hadn't applied for. I was the sister who picked up the phone for everyone. The middle, the go-between, the one whose number still worked for every person in this family because I hadn't burned anything down. I called our parents. Boston said, your mother wants to. I'm not ready. I look at that situation and I see Marcus sitting at my retirement dinner, telling the room how proud he was to be joining this family, and I can't get past it yet. Ludmila got on the phone. She said, I want to see my grandchild. I don't know how to do that without it feeling like I'm saying what happened was okay. I said I didn't have an answer for that. She said, I know. I was hoping you did. Everyone looking at me for the answer. Everyone hoping the middle sister had figured out the thing none of them could figure out themselves. I arranged for Ludmila to visit Bria and the baby. I did the coordinating, and I did not tell Celeste. I told myself a grandmother meeting her grandchild was a separate thing from everything else. Then Celeste found out. Ludmila posted a photo and deleted it, but not fast enough. Celeste called, and her voice was flat in a way I had never heard. Not angry flat, disappointed flat. She said, did you set it up? I said I helped coordinate it. She said, so you're managing this now. You're deciding who gets to move on and when. She said, I'm not mad at Mom. I'm mad at you. Because you're the one I trusted to not do things behind my back, and you just did the exact thing everyone else in this family has been doing to me for a year. She was right. I had done it again. The barbecue. The 8 months of not saying anything. And now this. A pattern I couldn't pretend wasn't a pattern anymore. I had arranged a visit behind my sister's back and told myself it was about a grandmother and a baby when really it was about me not wanting to have a hard conversation, and Celeste was the one who paid for it. Again, Celeste didn't answer my calls for a week. She texted, I need space. Please give me that. I gave her the space. It felt like swallowing glass. Then Bria called. Lighter. She said Boston had come to visit. He held the baby for 20 minutes without saying a word and kissed her forehead and left. Then she said, I want to do a dinner. All of us. At Mom and Dad's house. The whole family. I think it's time. I said I didn't think that was a good idea. She said, Celeste will come if you ask her. She always comes if you ask her. That was the moment I heard it. Really heard it. The calculation. Every phone call. Every request. Every time she said she needed me or was grateful I was there. It wasn't because she valued me. It was because I was the only door she had left to the rest of this family. She had been walking through that door every chance she got, using my willingness to show up as a way to pull everyone else back in. She'll come if you ask her. That was how Bria saw me. Not as a sister. As a tool. She went around me anyway. Told Ludmila about the dinner. Then Ludmila called me. Then Boston called me. Everyone waiting for me to make it happen. To call Celeste. To smooth it over. To hold the whole room together so nobody else had to sit in the truth of what happened. I called Jonah Jonah that night. He is the kind of person who listens without interrupting and then says the one thing you needed to hear. I told him everything from the beginning. When I finished, he said, "You know what nobody in your family has asked you in any of this?" I said, "What?" He said, "How you're doing. Not one of them has asked you how you're doing." I went through every conversation, every phone call, every text. Not one person in my family had looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I was the middle sister, and the middle sister was a function, not a person. Jonah said, "You don't have to build the bridge. You're not the contractor. You're a person standing in the middle of a road with traffic coming from both directions, and at some point you have to step off the road." I said I didn't know how. He said, "You start by telling the truth, all of it, to everyone, at the same time, in the same room." I agreed to the dinner, not for the reason Bria thought. I called Celeste. She answered on the third ring. I said, "I need to ask you to come to dinner at Mom and Dad's house." She said, "You're asking me to sit across from Bria?" I said, "I'm asking you to come because I have something I need to say to everyone, and I can only say it once." She said, "What are you going to say?" I said, "The truth, all of it, the stuff I should have said a long time ago." She said, "Including the barbecue?" I said, "Including everything." She said, "Okay, the way you say okay to a doctor who tells you a procedure is going to hurt." The night before the dinner, Bria called. She said, "I need to tell you something before tomorrow." Her voice was careful. She said, "I knew you saw us at the barbecue." My whole body went still. She said, "Marcus told me you came outside and the conversation stopped. I saw your face. I knew you saw something." Then she said the part I will never forget. "And I knew you wouldn't say anything because that's who you are. You don't say things that might make a mess." I counted on that. Every phone call, every request, every time she had leaned on me and called it sisterhood. She had known. She continued the affair for months knowing I had seen enough to blow it open, knowing I wouldn't because I was me. She had built her entire affair on the foundation of my inability to speak up. I said, "You counted on me being a coward." Bria said, "I counted on you being you." Like my silence was a feature of who I am. Like it was something she could rely on the way you rely on gravity. I said, "I'll see you tomorrow." I called Celeste and told her word for word. She said, "She knew you knew," and she kept going. I said, "Yes." She said, "Come to my apartment. Don't go home tonight." We sat on her couch. She said, "Whatever you're going to say tomorrow, say all of it. Don't protect anyone. Not me, not her, not yourself." I said, "I won't." Boston and Ludmila's house. The table was set for 6. Ludmila had made the same meal she always made when the family got together, and the normalcy of it was almost violent. We ate for about 12 minutes in near silence. Bria kept looking at me with the look that said, "Fix this, smooth this over, do the thing you always do." I put my fork down. I said, "I asked everyone to come here tonight because I need to say some things to all of you at once." Everyone stopped. I looked at Bria. I said, "Bria called me last night and told me she knew I saw her and Marcus at the barbecue 8 months before any of this came out. She knew and she counted on me not saying anything." She was right. I didn't say anything. That is my fault, and I have been carrying it every day since Celeste called me crying. I turned to Celeste. I said, "I told you about the barbecue and I was sorry and I meant it, but I didn't tell you everything. I spent 3 days feeling sick about it and then convinced myself it was nothing because telling you meant blowing up your engagement. I chose your comfort over your safety, and I'm going to live with that for a very long time." I turned to Boston and Ludmila. I said, "You have both been calling me for months asking me to fix this, to arrange visits, to convince Celeste to come to dinner, to be the person in the middle who holds everything together. Not one of you has asked me how I'm doing. Not once. I am not doing well. I have not been doing well since March. I am your daughter and I have been drowning in this, and none of you noticed because I was too busy being useful." Ludmila started crying. Boston put his hand flat on the table. Celeste was looking at me with something like recognition. I turned back to Bria. I said, "You told me you counted on me being me. You were right about the person I was, but I will not be that person anymore. I love you. You are my sister, but I will not be your bridge back to this family. You built this. You carry it. I am done carrying it for you." Bria's face changed. The apologetic look fell away. She said, "So what? You're the victim now? You watched it happen and said nothing, and now you want credit for being honest about it a year too late?" I said, "I'm not asking for credit. I'm telling you I'm done being the person everyone in this room uses to avoid having hard conversations with each other." Bria's eyes got wet, but her voice stayed hard. She said, "I needed you." I said, "You needed a door. That's not the same thing." Celeste spoke. She said, "She's right, Bria. She's right about all of it." For the first time since this whole thing started, the two of them were looking directly at each other. No one in between, just the two of them across a table with the full weight of what happened. Bria said, "I'm sorry, Celeste. I have been sorry every day." Celeste looked at her for a long time. Then she said, "I believe you're sorry. I don't believe you wouldn't do it again if the circumstances were right, and that's the part I can't get past." Bria had nothing. Boston cleared his throat. He said, "I owe you an apology." His voice was rough. "Your mother and I put you in the middle because it was easier than doing it ourselves. That wasn't fair. You're our daughter, not our mediator." Ludmila nodded through her tears. She said, "I'm sorry, baby. I should have asked how you were." I said, "Thank you." I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't okay. The dinner didn't end with a hug. It didn't end with forgiveness. It ended with people sitting at a table finally seeing each other clearly. I drove home alone. Jonah texted me. "How did it go?" I texted. I said everything. He texted, "How do you feel?" I sat in my car in the driveway for a while before I answered. Then I typed it. Lighter. Celeste called the next morning. She said, "I'm still angry about a lot of things, but I'm not angry at you anymore." I said, "That's enough for now." It was. The family didn't have a new shape yet, but everyone knew the old shape was gone and nobody was pretending otherwise. That was not resolution, but it was the thing that comes before resolution. And for now, for me, it was enough.